I know you've got a lot to cover, but humor me and dive into these amazing numbers we see coming out in these FDA panel meetings where they're admitting it, but it's getting almost no coverage.
Well, these people are just rubber stamps for these risk-benefit analyses, which are just awful. We show that Toby Rogers was so disgusted, he decided to do his own risk-benefit analysis, Dr. Toby Rogers. And he's an expert on risk-benefit analysis. He thought the Pfizer risk-benefit analysis was one of the shoddiest pieces of work that he has ever seen in his career. So he decided to do the risk-benefit analysis that should have been done. He discovered that we'll kill 117 kids to save one life. In his calculation. And his Substack was read by over 20,000 people, and everybody was complimenting him on the great job that he did, and nobody was pointing out any errors. So these FDA panels, they don't know what's going on. They basically have to rubber stamp it, or they're going to be kicked off the panel. And I have an admission of that from one of the panel members who basically said that. I mean, he didn't say it to me. He sent it to someone who's very, very trusted source, close friend of his, who relayed that to me. And, it explains why these people are voting for it. They basically don't want to get kicked off the committee. So, this is just a terrible, the number needed to vaccinate for kids is it's over 600,000. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, number needed to vaccinate in history. And of course, when you're using a vaccine that's 800 times more deadly than the smallpox vaccine, it's just a complete disaster in terms of the numbers for the FDA committee. I mean, and to top it off, the myocarditis. These people who are on the committee actually believe that there are fewer cases of myocarditis this year than last year, because they think that the number of cases of myocarditis is actually lower with the vaccine, and the risk is lower if you get vaccinated than if you just get COVID. It's completely backwards. I mean, I've gotten messages from people saying it's 100 times worse now than it was before. I mean, the people who are on these committees, they're not living in the same world we're in. And in fact, the risk of myocarditis, for example, if you calculate it out using the numbers from VAERS and using the CDC methodology for calculating the underreporting factor, which is 41, you get 1 in 317 boys aged 16 to 17 that will end up with myocarditis. And what we don't know is what's going to happen in a year from now. We don't know if 20% of those boys will be dead. We don't know whether it's 10%. We don't know whether it's 5%. We'll know in a year. And we'll know in 5 years whether the rate normally for viral myocarditis is 40 to 50% die after 5 years. We won't know that for 5 years. We'll find out. We're in the biggest experiment ever. And what's tragic is that already 25% of the kids 5 to 11 have been vaccinated. So they've done a great job of convincing parents that this thing is safe and effective. And, it's hardly the case. You look at VAERS, there are over 4,000 symptoms, which are elevated by a factor of 10 or more versus any previous vaccine in the last 5 years. So that's pretty troubling, and nobody wants to explain or even talk about that at all. I mean, this is a complete disaster. These vaccines should not be given to anyone under any circumstances, any age, any comorbidity. The evidence just doesn't support that. And nobody seems to want to debate me on this. I have tried to debate anyone in the medical community because they accuse me of spreading misinformation. But nobody wants to debate me. That's the best way to silence me, is to debate me. Nobody in mainstream academia, nobody in the CDC, nobody in the FDA. They all want to just ignore everything I'm saying because they don't want to confront what's going on.
Steve Kirsch is our guest. Steve,